So in my experience, the fastest way to make a senior leader uncomfortable is to whisper the words culture transformation, waving a PowerPoint presentation in hand. I've probably made every mistake in the book when it comes to leadership development and culture change. And as I continue in my career journey, I regularly consider how to leverage my lessons, how to do better, and ultimately how to make a positive difference. So good morning. It's so lovely to be here, especially to be home on Australian soil. I'm thrilled to be in a room full of professionals who, like me, spend so much time and energy in that dynamic, sometimes messy, often invisible space where leadership and culture meet. As David mentioned, I've spent over 20 years in HR learning and leadership development, working across various sectors in both consulting and in organisations, both private and publicly listed companies. My primary motivator in that time has been on implementing high-impact interventions, shifting mindsets and evolving cultures. I grew up here in New South Wales in the Riverina in a small country town called Temora, and I spent most of my young adult life here in Sydney. Now, I left Australia nearly 12 years ago, and I continue to pinch myself that I have had the privilege to hold regional and global positions whilst getting to live in cities, as David mentioned, like Singapore and London, and now in the Washington, DC area. I would absolutely say it is a bizarre time to live in the US, there is no question. And that is probably the number one question people ask me of what's it like to live there. And in the main, it's normal, but it is a bit weird. What I would say is, through leading global teams and living in different parts of the world, I have seen firsthand how cultures differ immensely, but also how universal many leadership truths are, and in fact, how universal many human truths are. So as you know, I work for Marriott International. David's stolen some of my thunder, but as an organisation, our purpose is all about connecting people through the power of travel. The company was founded in Washington, DC in 1927 by J. Willard Marriott and his wife Alice. And interestingly, it all started as a small root beer stand. Now, over 98 years, the company's grown into a global, publicly traded business, carrying forward a remarkable legacy established by the Marriott family. We have an awesome portfolio of brands and travel offerings, with everything from hotels to luxury villas to yachts. And we provide our guests with unforgettable experiences in amazing destinations. You've undoubtedly experienced some of our iconic brands, and hopefully you've had positive experiences and made wonderful memories. As a business, we have over 9,600 properties with over 1.7 million rooms in our portfolio. We operate in 143 countries and territories, and we have approximately 248 million Marriott Bonvoy members. Every time I read that, I think about Australia's population. So as you can see, look, we're performing particularly well as a business, and we will continue to grow, and we will continue to launch new brands in new markets with new ideas and with new innovations. Whilst I've been lucky to work in the hospitality industry for several years, I've actually only just joined Marriott. I only joined the company 7 months ago. So you can appreciate that I'm still very much getting the lay of the land. In my short time with the company, I've come to appreciate something profound. Marriott International isn't just a global hotel company. It's a company with soul, with a legacy rooted in service, warmth, and people-first leadership. Now, you can feel that the moment you walk into one of our properties or our corporate offices. The culture is genuinely human, and in many ways, it's our superpower. But here's the paradox. The stronger the legacy, the harder it can be to evolve. Not because people are resistant, but because they care. Because we don't want to break what's working. When a company's culture is already good, positive, values-driven, customer-focused, it can feel counterintuitive to change it. And yet the very strengths of a legacy culture can sometimes hold back innovation, agility, or bold decision-making. And here lies my challenge: how to honour the past while helping prepare leaders for the future, without triggering the alarm bells that often go off when we say culture change. For my work at Marriott, I must consider our heritage as our foundation and future readiness as our responsibility. And that's why culture change, and that's why culture evolution must be conducted carefully and respectfully. And so today I want to talk about a hypothesis, a slightly unconventional approach to culture change, and something that I'm pondering daily as I consider our ambitious growth targets, whilst respecting an organisational culture that is a source of pride, but could well be a limiter to our future success. An approach to culture change that's less about the grand gestures and the big programs, and rather more about subtle, strategic influence, or as I like to call it, culture change by stealth. So why stealth? By definition, in a military context, stealth is all about cautious and surreptitious action or movement. Now, I don't love the surreptitious bit, but I do wonder about movement and action conducted quietly and carefully so no one notices. I wonder if, as leadership practitioners, we might need to be a little more like mission commanders. We'd all agree that culture is the biggest driver of business performance, but often the hardest to name, to shift, or to own. And many of us have experienced, particularly in established organisations, that words like culture change do trigger subtle resistance, whilst overt culture change programs can make stakeholders and or senior leaders feel nervous or even cynical. For many, initiatives like these can feel political, risky, or even like a criticism of what came before. When a culture has heritage, it also has identity, and change can feel like an attack on that identity. And this is why culture evolution must be thought of with thought and care and with heart. Not because we're afraid of it, but because we respect it. And because change, when done right, builds on identity, not erases it. And therefore, stealth in this context isn't about being sneaky or surreptitious. It's not about secrecy or manipulation. Rather, I would argue it's about creating psychological safety for change, embedding change in ways that feel natural and integrated and unthreatening. It's about shifting tides without making waves. Now, let me be clear. Large-scale culture change programs, cultural diagnostics, leadership alignment initiatives are all incredibly powerful when the organisation and its leaders are ready for them. Stealth isn't a replacement for those. Think of it as a primer coat of paint that helps the bigger, bolder colours stick later. By building trust and momentum quietly, you make it much more likely that the big programs and initiatives will succeed when they arrive. In a previous organisation, I was tasked with creating a leadership program for the top 250 leaders. It was recognised by the then CEO that we needed to put leaders through some kind of leadership gym. I'm not sure if you've had that, but it's a bizarre request. As part of our needs analysis, unsurprisingly, we identified some significant cultural gaps. But I continued to hit roadblocks when trying to build formal culture change into the program. So the official aim of the program became building leadership muscle to help prepare leaders for future growth. But I knew that if we didn't tackle some of the cultural undercurrents of the organisation, then the whole intervention could be a colossal waste of time. Human Synergistics was one of our global partners on the program. They were hugely helpful in guiding and navigating us in this conundrum. They navigated it quite wisely. So in the program, what we did was we were able to thoughtfully use cultural acupuncture, small, strategic pressure points, to maintain comfort and safety whilst creating space for a leadership conversation and a deeper focus on culture. Using the OCI as a basis, we asked leaders in real time to describe the current culture and then also to describe their ideal culture. Now, this was a safe way of surfacing the cultural challenges that were holding the company back. We didn't push culture, we let it emerge. We were able to show leaders that culture isn't just what surrounds us, it's what we carry and what we choose to evolve within ourselves and within our systems. And of course, we were able to help them realize that they weren't just part of the culture, but rather culture carriers, creators of and broadcasters of the culture. Now, I fundamentally believe that you can't shift culture if you haven't first shifted consciousness. And so we also leveraged the LSI to help leaders with self-awareness and personal responsibility. The LSI became a mirror, not a hammer. It was useful, almost like a portal, through which leaders could translate what we were discussing in the program into their own current reality. It was a powerful mindsets and behaviours catalyst, not only helping leaders explore their current headspace and, of course, understanding the perceptions of others, but also to see the implied impact on the culture, to own it, and to do so in a constructive and a personally meaningful way. Now, the magic of this approach was we were able to build a movement. We created a network of leaders who became champions, who helped move the work forward. They implemented symbolic and practical interventions within their own teams and departments, all designed to support the desired culture. And with leaders who are open-minded and open-hearted, this initiative became the primer to much wider work that I know is still ongoing in the company, with the organisation shifting to a performance mindset, building a performance culture, with deep work underway on how the business manages talent, how it manages reward, and how it supports performance, all with the support and energy of the senior leadership team. So here are some lessons I've learned along the way. HR, learning and leadership practitioners, we can't shape the culture through our own behaviours and our own initiatives. The real work happens when you equip leaders to become culture carriers. Now, my guidance when considering stealthy moves is to observe the unwritten and the unwritten rules before trying to make changes. Identify possible points of leverage that are already built into your systems, onboarding programs, talent practices, team rituals, desire to send leaders to the leadership gym, and be smart with language. Choose language that inspires rather than threatens. Perhaps language like leadership excellence rather than culture change. When we introduce leadership programs, as many of us do, we often say that we're building skills or we're building pipelines. But as practitioners, we must remember every program is the chance to shift culture, not by announcement, but by stealth, through the way that we design the experiences. So some experiences that I've found particularly useful and some actions that I've found particularly useful are as follows. I really love action learning projects. I think they're great because they help the business solve problems, right? But more importantly, they model collaboration, they model inclusivity and innovation. Leaders don't just learn skills, but they practice new ways of working together. Now that's culture change hidden in plain sight. And the stealthy move, no one will resist a project that drives business value. But the cultural impact lasts far beyond the project. When leaders step into teaching roles or join peer groups, they spread more than content. They spread stories and values and behaviours. And over time, these informal conversations do the real work of culture change more than any top-down campaign. The stealthy move here is senior leaders think they're just being guest speakers. Yeah? But of course, really, they're broadcasting cultural signals. By giving leaders stretch assignments or immersive simulations, we're not just teaching them agility, we're normalizing it. We're saying this is how we lead here. Culture shifts fastest when people live it rather than hear about it. Reverse mentoring can look like a development tool, but actually it's a subtle rebalancing of hierarchy and voice. And well-being programs, well, they look like self-care, but actually they shift leadership identity from heroic endurance to sustainable performance. These are all stealthy cultural moves. My point is this: leadership development is never just about skills development. It's always a Trojan horse. Every program, every initiative is a chance to hardwire the culture that we want, subtly, sustainably, and in ways that leaders embrace, because it feels like growth, not change management. Now, a word to the wise. Remember, we have to practice patience. I heard a few people say that. Richard, I think, said that. Measure quietly. Share small success stories early. Leverage your influencers and your advocates, and let that momentum build. When equipping leaders to become culture carriers, consider that there are two powerful levers that can support this: programmatic and symbolic interventions. Now remember, stealth isn't about avoiding the bigger structural work. It's about whetting appetite, and it's about gaining traction. Creating that network of leaders who are already aligned and engaged so you can roll out the bigger initiatives. Sorry, I've lost myself, but I'm going to find it again. Roll out your large-scale initiatives. Then that pre-work can be the difference between a cultural transformation landing smoothly or alternatively where you face significant resistance. And so I want to talk about the programmatic interventions. These are those practical structural moves. My guidance is build self-awareness instruments into your interventions wherever you can. So self-awareness and cultural awareness become second nature in the business. Align your talent and succession planning to the cultural behaviours that you want. Create cross-functional opportunities where the desired culture has to be lived, not just discussed. And when designing business processes, tools, ways of working and systems, ensure they support and don't detract from your desired culture. They also have to be easily repeatable and consistent. And finally, make culture conversations a staple of development. Don't underestimate that leaders diagnosing their own team's microcultures is incredibly powerful. Now, the symbolic interventions are all about meaning making. They're visible, often small acts that speak volumes. A CEO personally welcoming graduates to the organisation sends a message about valuing future talent. Storytelling embeds the desired culture into the organisation's memory, and rituals, even short ones, can reinforce the desired culture and values. How we reward people for how they achieved results ensures that the message is clear, that culture matters as much as the outcome. Now, my other big lesson is this work is hard, really hard. And we do need to look after ourselves, and we do need to consider our own growth and our own development in the process. And so to that end, the LSI has probably been the single biggest influence in my personal journey. It has helped me be a better leader, a better practitioner, a better husband, and frankly, a better human. As you can see, I did my first LSI 20 years ago, and I've been on a journey ever since. I also recognise, yes, I am due for a retest, so I've got to get organised. Now, over the years, I've relied on the LSI for self-awareness, often as a jolt, often as a reminder to pull my socks up, as a reminder to be proud of my progress, as a reminder that I'm not infallible and I need to bring people on the journey with me. Now, 20 years in, I'm comfortable to admit that I'm not perfect. I got a little bit of vomit saying it, but I'm not perfect. And I am a work in progress, and that's absolutely okay. And so my journey continues, now as an employee in an organisation with a close to 100-year legacy and a deeply embedded culture that is widely admired. And yes, it does feel like risky business, even considering culture change and the path ahead. And I do question, do I have the chops? Do I know what I'm doing? And I keep coming back to this model. It's a model I learned from a brilliant practitioner whose name is Max Martina. Max is the president of a firm out of Seattle called Cambridge Leadership Associates, who specialize in adaptive leadership. And it's the idea that engagement and progress occur when your purpose is greater than any perceived or actual loss. Again, I'm going to repeat it. Engagement and progress occur when your purpose is greater than any perceived or actual loss. And for me, my purpose is all about the growth and development of others. It's what drives me to keep pushing in areas that often feel uncomfortable, even if it means risking my job or my reputation. You see, I fundamentally believe that leadership matters. What we say, what we reward, what we challenge, and what we practice matters. When we help leaders at all levels see themselves as owners of the culture, we create a cascade effect. The responsibility for culture moves from HR's job to my job as a leader, and that's when culture change becomes self-sustaining. As someone who has just stepped into a new culture, again, I'm reminded daily that leadership is a form of translation. And the most fluent leaders aren't those who shout culture change. They're the ones who embody it. And so I leave you with this one final thought. Culture change by stealth isn't about hiding. It's about respecting where you've been while quietly walking towards where you need to go. Thank you so much.